Welcome back, guys, from the ad break. Now let's see what we are going to do now. So like I said, we did the reasons for the nervous system, right? Why do you have one? And now we're going to move to the central nervous system. Now our key words here is central nervous system, and that consists of the brain and the spinal cord, right? So it's easy to remember. It's only two parts that forms part of the central nervous system. And I always tell the children, it's central nervous system. It's in the center of your body, brain and spinal cord, right? In the center, Mr. Fenter. Just remember it like that, central. The brain. Well, I do hope you know what a brain is. That's the thing here in your head, right? That's the reason why you have a cell phone, why you have internet, why we are living in houses, driving cars. It's because of all this abstract thought, right? It's intelligence. This is where intelligence is seated, right? And also, it will interpret senses, right? What is the five senses again? It is smelling, it is tasting, it is hearing, it is seeing, it is feeling, right? So all those information coming from the senses goes to the brain, it interprets it, and it reacts on it. Okay, so that is what the brain's function is, very important function. The spinal cord is a long, thin, tubular structure within the vertebral column. Now the vertebral column, we did that in grade 10, and that is part of your skeletal structure, and it's made up of nervous tissue, right? So there's a lot of nervous tissue within the spinal cord. So if you look at this flow diagram, you will see the central nervous system is composed of the brain, like that definition said, and the spinal cord. Now we're going to start off with the spinal cord. But before we do, we need to know these vital scientific words. The first one is dorsal. Dorsal means the back part or the top part of an animal. What do we mean by that? We mean this is your back, right, here at the back. And if animals are on fours, so this will be their top part, isn't it? So that will be the dorsal part, all right? And then the ventral part will be the abdominal or lower side. So your tummy, or an animal if you're standing like that, the bottom part. Right, that's ventral. Then afferent, that is conducting inwards, towards the central nervous system, towards it. And efferent is conducting outwards, so it's away from the central nervous system. Right, the spinal cord, it connects the brain with the rest of the nervous system. So you'll see, if you look at this picture of the brain, you'll see the spinal cord is here at the bottom, right? And that means that the brain, with all its functions, will be connected to the rest of the body that is down there. All right, the spinal cord is made up of delicate nervous system which cannot repair itself. The reason being the following. Nerve cells is one of the cells in your body that cannot undergo mitosis, right? Not at all. And if you remember from the beginning of the year when we looked at mitosis and meiosis, mitosis is the renewal of a cell. It makes a copy of it, it repairs itself. Like your skin cells, every day you got basically new skin because of the mitosis taking place, right? Now nerve cells cannot do that. They cannot repair themselves at all. So when they are bruised, when they are damaged at all, just a little bit, it's gone, they are broken, right? So that is why spinal cord injuries are so devastating to people, because the spinal cord can't even be broken. It can just be damaged or bruised, and you won't be able to walk or use your arms, or your bladder won't work, your lungs won't work. It depends on where the damage was taking place. Yes, you can break your back and break the bony part of the back. If the spinal cord stays intact and unbruised, you will still be able to walk and you'll have full functions. You'll just have broken bones in your back. But if you have spinal cord injury, that's a total different thing. It can take up to 18 months for the spinal cord, for that bruising to go down. And after that 18 months, some people regain some of their functions. They can maybe move their arm or move their leg, but usually not. Right, so it's really a serious injury when your spinal cord is affected. All right, and what they are doing currently is research on stem cells. And I know in Japan, they actually approved the stem cell therapy. What they do is they take stem cells from bone marrow. Now, if you remember in grade 10, every single bone in your body, in the middle, there is marrow. And within that marrow, there are cells, stem cells. Now, what is a stem cell? A stem cell is a cell that can differentiate or go in and become any type of tissue. Any type of tissue. So they inject that stem cell into the spinal cord, and what they found was it sometimes helped repair the bruising, but in a few cases, actually new nerve cells started to grow. Right, so there is some hope for people that are affected by this, but it's still in research phase, and so there's no cure when your spinal cord is broken. Right, next. Now let's look at our spinal cord. As you can see, important part here, your brain, right? And now we have our spinal cord going down here. And you can see it's surrounded by these bony things here, right? And those bony things you've learned in grade 10 are the vertebra. The vertebra, they are bony, they are there for protection. And in between these bony things, there are intervertebral discs, like little cushions, right? And then this is actually protecting the spinal cord. So the spinal cord is in there, in the middle there. And the cerebrospinal fluid, this blue stuff here, it's a fluid that acts as a shock absorber as well. So this spinal cord is actually suspended in that fluid, which helps with shock absorption. Now, like I said, the spinal cord is situated within the vertebral column, and there are 33 vertebrae or bones within the disc, with disc of cartilage between them. Let me tell you about these discs. They are basically little cushions. Within, here's a bone, and there's a little cushion, right? If it wasn't there, you would be walking or you would be running, and these bones would be flapping like this, right? What a noise. And the mechanical injury, the friction, can you imagine, walking like that? Your poor spinal cord, right? So we need those discs to be like a shock absorber for these bones, right? So it's protecting that spinal cord within, right? And you've heard of old people or maybe sporting people that talks about a slipped disc. That is when that disc is slipping out. And apparently extremely painful. I don't want that ever in my life, because now your nerves are now starting to be irritated. So you've got a lot of pain, right? And we are talking about the protection now, yeah? So the spinal cord is protected by the bones, right? That's the first one, bones, the vertebra. And then 3 meninges. Now meninges, it sounds very weird, it's a funny name. But meninges is a scientific word for membranes, right? So it's easy, meninges, membranes, right? Just remember it like that. In the old days, you had to remember the names of the 3, but luckily you don't have to. So I didn't even put it on the slides because I don't want you to worry about it, okay? You don't need to know the names. All you need to know is that there are 3 membranes. And then cerebrospinal fluid, that is the fluid that you saw on the diagram, which is the spinal cord is suspended in, right? It's like a shock absorber. So there's 3 ways in which the spinal cord will be protected. Firstly, it's within the bony vertebral column. Secondly, the meninges surrounding this and making sure that it doesn't go around like this. And then the cerebrospinal fluid, which is also a shock absorber. Right, so those are the 3 ways in which it is protected. So let's look at the spinal cord from this angle. Right, you can see here that there is things coming out of the spinal cord like here and there. We call those roots, right? And the ones with the bubbles in it is dorsal roots because those bubbles are ganglion. We call it ganglion, all right? And in your dorsal root, you will always find your sensory neuron. If you look at the bottom here, at this one, they actually have it at a different angle, you will see that the front of this root is the ventral root. The ventral root, and within the ventral root, you will always find the motor neuron that goes away from the spinal cord. And at the back of this motor neuron, you'll find the sensory root, and that is a sensory neuron that's in the dorsal root. Right, so that's basically, and they just showed you that they cut away some of the membranes. This is the outer membrane here, right? And you can see it. They call it the dura mater, but you don't need to know that. Let's move on. This is an actual picture, what a neuro surgeon will see. You can see those little fibers there. Those are the roots there. If he cuts it, the wrong one there, or damages, the person won't be able to walk or talk or whatever, right? So it's very delicate operations. But this is what you will have. You will see this in your exam paper. So let's look at a transversal view. So let me just show you what a transversal view is. This is your spinal cord, and you will cut it transversally like this, right? And then you will look at it from above like that. That is a transversal view. Right, so let's look at our spinal cord. Firstly, the first thing that you will notice is that it is white on the outside and there's a gray area here. It looks like an H. Right. The gray matter is the cell bodies of the neurons that has nucleuses and cytoplasm, and that gives it its grayish color. And the neuron fibers, which is more white, will be on the outside. Right. So you've got white matter on the outside and gray matter in the inside. There's also a central canal which contains cerebrospinal fluid, also for protection. And then you have these things here, the spinal nerve, and like I said, the roots, right? These are the roots. And like I told you, the ones with the bubbles, where the dorsal ganglion is where your sensory neuron is. And the ones without the bubble will be your motor neuron, and that will be your ventral root. So this is the ventral root, and this is the dorsal root. Just see where the bubble or the ganglion is. All right. And they are always paired. So for example, let me show you. If your sensory neuron is from your finger, it goes to the spinal cord. The motor neuron will go back to the finger. It will not go back to the eye. So you can't do this and then your eye goes like that. That would be very weird, right? It's paired. It's from the finger back to the finger. All right, that's very important. Then, the spinal cord is the pathway for all impulses conducted, like I said, from the receptors to the brain and from the brain to the effectors, right, to effect that change. Gray matter is in the inside and white matter is on the outside. Right, like I said, the paired spinal nerves protrude through the spaces between the vertebrae, which means between those bones that we were talking about, the spinal nerves will go out there. It's not on the bones, it's in between, right? And all reflex actions will go through this, but we're going to do more detail on that later. Let's get to some questions. Name the structure depicted in the diagram. Now, if you look at that, that is definitely not the brain. That is the spinal cord, right? Question 2. Give the letter and the name, so you must give both, of the structure that transmits impulses from the receptor towards the structure, so towards the spinal cord, right? So we know that the sensory neurons will transmit an impulse from the receptor to the spinal cord. I'm getting the name now. So that's not the only answer. They want you to identify it on the picture as well. So where will the sensory neuron be? I told you, you look where the bubble is, the ganglion is. So this is your dorsal root, and your sensory neuron will always be in your dorsal root. So it will be number A. sensory neuron. Can you see you've got 2 marks there? Right. Identify and write the following name for the following labels. Right, number B. Let's look at number B. There's number B. That's the grey part. So that would be the grey matter. C. That is the white part. So it will be the white matter. D. Remember now I said that this will be the dorsal root. So what will this be? This will be the ventral root. F. That will be the bubble there, and we know that the bubble's name is not a bubble. You do not write bubble, you write dorsal root ganglion. Never bubble, you will not get a mark for the bubble. Let's move on. Name the structure E. Where is structure E? Structure E is right there in the middle there, and that's the central canal. And what is the name of the fluid that's found inside the structure? Remember, that is the cerebrospinal fluid. Name 3 ways in which the spinal cord is protected against mechanical injury. Remember, I said the bones, the vertebral column, the meninges, the membranes, and it's surrounded by the cerebrospinal fluid.